particularly for the most vulnerable amongst us. Before we get started, though, I'd like to state at the outset that this conversation today is not about politics. It's about the current state of global hunger and how the Black Sea Grain Initiative plays an outsized role in addressing this once-in-a-generation crisis that we're currently in. The United States strongly supports the Black Sea Grain Initiative brokered by the United Nations in Turkey. Since its inception, the BSGI has facilitated the export of more than 30 million metric tons of grain and helped to stabilize and lower global food prices. Clear factual data, and we'll hear some today from FAO, from WFP, from IFAD, has shown that Russia's war against Ukraine has had and continues to have an outsized and disastrous impact on global food security. Those are the facts. In order to address the global impact of this unprovoked and unjustified war, we must discuss this issue and acknowledge that the continuation of the BSGI is part of the solution. So let's get started. I want to express my sincere appreciation to all of you, the attendees, for your presence here today. Your engagement, your commitment, and your collective efforts along with all of us is vital to addressing global food security. Thank you. So before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to set the stage with a quick video. Pleasure to invite to the podium our first speaker, Deputy Minister for Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine, Markian Dimitrasevich, to give opening remarks. Sir, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me express my sincere gratitude to organizers for the possibility to discuss such a crucial issue for Ukraine, and not only for Ukraine, for all the world. We highly appreciate international efforts that are directed to the functioning of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The Grain Initiative is critically important. It's one of the main ways of supplying agricultural products to international markets, especially to countries which suffer from hunger. A significant part of grain that had passed through the corridor goes to African and Asian countries. Meanwhile, the grain corridor is an essential source of humanitarian relief supplies for the World Food Programme. The operation of grain corridor makes possible to keep prices. Obviously, if a major player withdraws from the food market, prices will start to grow immediately. Colleagues, representatives of the Russian Federation, as part of inspection teams at the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul, constantly delay and disrupt the process of conducting relevant inspections of vessels sailing to and from Ukrainian seaports. The number of inspection teams was reduced. Russian inspectors began checking the performance of vessels that are not regulated by the JCC's guiding documents. They formed their own inspection plans by choosing the vessel from the fleet at their own discretion, which completely contradicts the terms of the initiative. Finally, the Port of Danny was blocked. Port of Danny is one of the three main operational ports of the Grain Initiative. Moreover, Russians have completely stopped registering a new fleet since June 26. If the registration of vessels will not be restored, the grain supplies will be completely stopped. By signing the Black Sea Grain Initiative, the parties committed themselves to provide maximum security guarantees for all vessels participating in the initiative and to facilitate the food flows from Ukraine. At the same time, the Russian Federation is not fulfilling its obligations. The Russian Federation, in its comments that we have heard during the conference, omitted the key fundamental issue that prompted the conclusion of the initiative, the attack on the territory of Ukraine. Currently, Russia remains the main threat in the Black Sea. The vessels which should be responsible for the safety and smooth operation of the grain corridor fire missiles at civilians. I can share you with my own story that happened the night before yesterday, while I was at this conference together with you. Russian missiles attacked my hometown. My parents, my friends, my native home were affected by these missiles. And these missiles were launched from the vessels in the Black Sea. Distinguished participants, Black Sea Grain Initiative is a part of complex international supply chains. At the same time, it gives Ukrainian farmers the opportunity to survive, and to the most vulnerable countries and their peoples, it gives essential they need, food. We call on our partners to keep their efforts to continue to keep this grain initiative operational and to expand it for at least to the Mykolaiv port, and to make this grain initiative more predictable, to agree on it for at least for 1 year. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your intentions for this meeting roundtable today, and I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for providing the framing for this very important discussion today. First, today we will have a series of briefings on the current state of the Black Sea Grain Initiative and the importance of its continuation and effective implementation. Many of you have seen the reporting, but it's worth mentioning that in recent months, Russia has purposely slowed the flow of grain to a trickle. In June, only 2 million tons of foodstuffs were exported, which is well below port capacity and industry demands. On June 30th, UN Secretary General Guterres noted with concern that no new vessels had been allowed to join the initiative since June 26th, despite the submission of 29 applications to the Joint Coordination Center. And currently, only 13 ships remain in the initiative. 1 million or more tons of food will remain stuck between now and the next renewal deadline of July 17th. That's 10 days from now. With the commencement of the harvest season, every single day counts. So we start our discussion today with someone who knows more about this than any of us, Ukrainian Grain Association President Mykola Gorbachev. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear participant, dear organizer. First of all, I would like to say that thanks for your support in Ukraine, and without your support, unfortunately, we could not do anything with this problem which we face on during the war. Ukrainian Grain Association is a public organization. We are about 30 years old since independence of Ukraine, and about 90% from total grain export done by our members. We've got as members big and small companies which can bring the expertise around the world with all experience of 200 years. Ukraine is located in a good area, and Ukraine grows grain 1,000 years ago, export grain 1,000 years ago, and we export grain during the First World War, during the Second World War, and of course we continue to export grain during this war. And nobody will stop this process, it's clear, and business will find the solution how to continue to feed the world. What is going now. Since war began, farmers lost a lot of money, and this war creates just unpredictability on the business, and nobody can make the clear plan what will we do. Farmers' losses and traders' losses for the moment is only about $9 billion. It's exact losses. It's with the assets, with the stolen grain, which Russia just stolen on an occupied territory. But on the same time, we've got indirect losses, which about $30 billion as well. This map can show to you about 6,000 kilometers on the front line. It happened on the end of the February 22nd when Russia just invaded in Ukraine. And all this territory is about 20% from Ukrainian territory. It's 6 million hectares. And now we have to check all of this territory for the demining. Unfortunately in Europe, or maybe it's good luck, in Europe we have no such experience, and only Croatia faced on such problem 30 years ago, and we have no equipment, we have no enough expert who can do this, and we have to stay with this. That's why such big organization as United Nations and the FAO, I'm sure that will help to Ukraine to find the solution how to demine this territory. I just would like to show a few photos what is going in Ukraine. About 20%, 25% of these missiles, rockets and bombs, they didn't explode it yet. And it can explode at any time when farmers just go into the fields. And as a consequences, you see that how farmers can operate on their land. It's not a joke when farmers is going to their fields and they are not sure they will come back to their home. They are member of this front line. This is one of the biggest port which was attacked by Russian rockets. Their storage capacity for 500,000 tons. It's one of the biggest river terminal. And now you can see only sticks where was before the birth. And all transportation line on a Dnipro River now is blocked. Because if before we could bring the grain on Dnipro River to our ports, for the moment it's blocked absolutely. And now we have to use railway or trucks, and for the farmers it's not so useful and of course more expensive. On this slide I would like to show the evolution of grain production in Ukraine for the past 23 years. And you see, before the war we grew 106 million tons grain and oilseeds. And our forecast for export in that year was 73 million tons. Ukraine can feed up people in 3 times more on the numbers than our own population. For our domestic consumption, we use about 25-28 million tons of grain and oilseed. All the rest we are exporting. Geographically, we have a really good access to the African countries, to the Europe and to Asia. And about 95% our export before the war was done through the Black Sea ports. You see our forecast for the next campaign. It's about 69 million ton grain and oilseeds production and export about 45 million. But it's still big number. In this season we export 58 million ton grain and oilseeds. Additionally, we export 9 million ton. Together it's 5.5 million sunflower oil and 4 million. For this 32 million ton, about $1 billion on demurrage. It means $30 per ton on each ton which we export through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. On the same time, we can continue to export by railway and trucks through our neighboring country in Europe, and of course we continue to use our Danube River. On Danube River, for the moment, we can export about 2 million tons per month, and we can double this volume. This is grain corridor, how we export by countries, and you can find this information on Ukrainian Grain Association website. It's open information by products, by countries, without any problem. But if grain initiative will not work, of course I would like to continue to export through the grain corridor, through the Black Sea port. It's the most efficient way, because farmers' expenses of logistics through the Black Sea corridor about $30. But if we are going on alternative way, it's in 3 times higher. Farmers pay $100 per ton when we export through the Romanian ports or through the Polish port or other way. That's why we would like to keep this grain corridor open. But if it will not work, what will happen? How we will export the grain? Of course, we start to prepare the variant B. Variant B is cumulative product with the dry port, the new ports, and sea ports as well. Our government, Minister of Infrastructure, Minister of Economy, Minister of Agrarian Policy, they start to work on a financial fund on which we will accumulate 20 billion hryvnia, it's about $500 million, which can compensate any damages for the vessels which will come to Ukraine if grain corridor will not work. On the same time, we propose to European Commission maybe Europe will take a lead on this, and maybe Europe will pay all these damages and Ukraine just will compensate the European Union. In this case, I think trusting to this support will be on another level, and the ship owners will trust on this initiative faster than Ukraine will try to organize this procedure. But now this point on discussion. The bottleneck on other sources, of course, is size of the European railway and European ports. For example, all Polish ports can export about 6 million tons per year. The biggest European port near us, Constanta, 25 million tons a year. All Bulgarian ports about 6 million tons. Can you imagine all of them cannot satisfy our export even with such low level which will face on a next campaign? All of them cannot satisfy us. They cannot absorb such big volume of grain. For example, in railway we can prepare for 12 trains per day, but unfortunately European railway can absorb just 2, maximum 3 trains per day, because it's absolutely another infrastructure, absolutely another networking system, and it's a problem. I would like to show to you this slide with the Danube River. On a, you see that on a down, it's a Romanian territory. On a up, it's a Ukrainian channel Bystre. And we propose to organize the teamwork where we can load grain on Kilia, Ismail. On the same time, we can work on Reni, Moldavian Giurgiulești, and Romanian Galati. If we load their barges and after we'll move to Romanian territorial water on anchorage station, and after to make the transshipment directly, it will be the easiest way. On this slide, I put the Ukrainian side where we can organize anchorage station. It's on a blue, not circle, but on a blue color. And this, here you can see what we can do. On the same time, we can organize on Romanian territorial water, which will be more safety. It's a quite good solution without big investment, how to increase the throughput capacity of the Dnipro River. The Dnipro River. And the same we can organize near the Constanța port. What we need the support from business. We need just a critical mass which will be agreed to follow this project. And additionally, we will need support from the owners of barges, because our barges mostly block on Dnipro River. And if we will just liberalize them, it will be good. From Ukrainian side, we need to implement the regulation which we signed when we signed the agreement with association with Europe. And of course, I hope we will find the solution in any case. And I would like to thank one more time to all of you for the support in Ukraine. And I am sure we will win and we will continue to feed the world. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Now turn the floor over to FAO Chief Economist, Maximo Torero.
Thank you very much, Chair, and esteemed representative of government of Ukraine and the United States of America, and all guests here. It's a pleasure to do a brief presentation on the numbers that we are observing and the context of where we are operating. So let me start first with setting the scene, why the world needs the grain coming from Ukrainian farmers and also from Russian farmers for the agri-food system commodities. As we know, and we have been reporting all the time, Ukraine and Russia Federation together were key exporters of cereals, 1/3 of the world's cereals. So they were playing a crucial role. In 2021, either the Russian Federation or Ukraine, or both, rank among the top 3 global exporters of wheat, barley, maize, rapeseed oil, sunflower seed, and sunflower oil. The Russian Federation also ranked as the world top exporter of nitrogen fertilizer, the second leading supplier of potassium fertilizer, and the third largest exporter of phosphorus fertilizers. We know that maritime transportation is the most efficient and the cost-efficient way to ship in agricultural products, and that's why this initiative is so important. And the maritime transportation came to a complete halt in 24th of February 2022 with the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. And that's where we are seeing the challenges that we have to resolve, and that's why this initiative was so important. And the figures that you see in the bottom are basically how the export share has evolved between the beginning 2021 and 2022, and you will see substantial impacts on the supplier for the different commodities of the countries. Now, there were two prior to the onset of the war, maritime shipments through the Black Sea accounted to over 90% of Ukraine's agricultural commodity exports. Market and also farmers in Ukraine reacted with great relief when on July 2022, the so-called Istanbul agreements were agreed. And there are two distinct sets of agreements were signed in Istanbul. The first thing is the agreement on the safe transportation of grain and foodstuff from Ukraine ports, so the Black Sea Grain Initiative. And the parties to this initiative are the Republic of Turkey, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine, as proposed by the Secretary General of the United Nations. And in the initiative, the partners recognize the role of the UN Secretary General in securing the discussions and request his assistance in its implementation. The second was the Memorandum of Understanding between Russian Federation and the Secretary of the United Nations on promoting Russian food products and fertilizers to the world markets. It's important to note that the Black Sea Grain Initiative was negotiated under auspices of the UN Secretary General within existing maritime laws. In particular, paragraph 2 of the DSGI states the initiative is based on agreements of partners of the International Convention on the Safety of Life at Sea in 1974, as amended, and Regulations 11.2-11 and the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code, Part B, paragraph 426. PAO, of course, doesn't have any legal authority over any of these agreements. However, we closely track the information and what is happening in this initiative. Now, why the initiative was so important? The main purpose of the initiative was basically to move grain into the markets, because since the war, and as these were key exporting countries, the prices are starting to go up, and that of course has a link into food security. But also, of course, it wanted to increase availability and increase the way in which farmers of grain were able to move their grain and get the revenues that they were supposed to get because of this. Considering the significance of the two countries as key providers of food and fertilizers globally, the main purpose of the Istanbul Agreement was the resumption of grain and grain exports via the Black Sea ports, and to ensure that Russian food products and fertilizers reach global markets and are not impeded by measures of imposed upon the country. The objective was to improve global food availability and lessening the pressure on the world prices, thus facilitating access to food. For implementation of the agreement, a joint coordination center, the GCC, was set up in Istanbul 27 of July of 2022 under the auspices of the United Nations, comprised of a senior representatives of Turkey, the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United Nations. Now, the results were extremely important, and this just summarizes all the work that the Joint Center has been doing to be able to collect this information. We have been informally helping them, but they have now a completely online system in which you can track everything that is happening every day. So up to today, up to the last data that we have, 32.4 million metric tons were moved through the Black Sea Grain Initiative. 655,000 tons were exported by WFP, and here you see in this graph the composition. Now, a little over half of the total commodities exported was maize, and a little over a quarter was wheat. A frequently voiced criticism is that the exports are not benefiting the most vulnerable countries. And the data show that 57% of exports went to developing countries with different income levels. Furthermore, it is evident that the Black Sea Grain Initiative have contributed to improving global food availability and lowering global food prices. It needs to be noted, nevertheless, that no information is available on the final use and the final destination of the shipments. Because, for example, there are many cases that cereals that were sent to one country through the Black Sea Grain Initiative were re-exported or processed and then exported to another country. And we cannot trace that. So we need to be very careful when we look at these numbers. So the minimum is what we can record, but there is a lot more that goes processed after you move through Turkey or other countries. Now, just to give you a graphical impact of what happened since the establishment of the Grain Sea Initiative. And you can see clearly that prices start to fall significantly as a result of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Right now, we are reporting around 14 months of the falling of the FAO food price index. So this graph clearly shows that the Black Sea Grain Initiative had a significant impact, and that's why it's so important in renewal. Even more, if we go into the detail up to today of how prices are evolving, as I mentioned before, the stabilization of the spiraling prices was one of the main objectives of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. And in fact, international export quotations of basic foodstuff as measured by the FAO food price index saw near uninterrupted increases between the second half of 2020 and March 2022. And 2020 was mostly because of the COVID-19 recovery, and when the index reached all-time high in February 2022. Now, since reaching its all-time high in March 2022, the FAO food price index has declined, and in May 2023 it averaged 22.1% lower than the peak reached in March 2022. And today we launched the FAO food price index of June, and again we observe a decline of the food price index. The graph on the right-hand side shows the price indices of the various commodities, similar to what I showed before. However, those meat and sugar have increased in January 2023 for other reasons which are not related directly to this. It needs to be noted that FAO vegetable oil price index also declined and almost uninterruptedly since then. So we have seen a significant improvement over the evolution of price. And overall, it can be said that the Black Sea Grain Initiative has contributed to lessening the pressures on world prices by increasing global availability and exportable supplies. The Black Sea Grain Initiative also enabled the resumption of exports of grains and other foodstuff as well as fertilizers, including ammonia, through a safe maritime humanitarian corridor from the three key Ukrainian ports, Odessa, Chermorsk, and USUN. As it can be seen in this slide, the peak of exports under the initiative took place in October 2022, and also in March 2023, when exports were in the range of 4 million tons each month. However, exports have declined to 1.33 million tons in May 2023, before expanding again in June. In fact, in mid-June, the offices of the UN coordinator of the Black Sea Grain Initiative issued an update warning that the volume of food exported by the initiative in May was the lowest since the start of the initiative and well below shipping demands and Ukraine export capacity. The decline was mainly due to the dramatic reduction in the number of inspections. Since 25th of May, the Joint Coordination Group has reduced the number of inspection teams from 3 to 2. It is with concern that we watch the declining volumes passing from the inspection of Istanbul, which has resulted in a reduction in the movement of vessels coming in and out of Ukrainian seaports, leading to a drop in the food exports, which are essential to global markets. Now, our preliminary analysis of available trade data, and here I need to stress available because we are not getting any more reporting of some key exporting countries, indicate that although some countries such as Egypt decrease their import volumes, countries often manage to diversify their sources of origin of food. However, this came at a cost. FAO estimates that the global food import bill reached $1.95 trillion in 2022, up 11% from 2021, because mostly of increasing prices, and forecasts that the bill will increase by a further 1.5% in 2023 to reach $1.98 trillion. It is important to note that most of the increase is generally due to higher prices. As a result of increased import costs for food, many countries already battling macroeconomic problems, depends their balance on payments problems and exchange rate problems are facing significant challenges. These two charts that we are presenting here compare major suppliers of wheat and maize exports on a monthly basis from January 21 to March 2023. To account for seasonality, the dotted line represents the reference level of cumulative exports in the same month in the previous year. While there are constraints with regard to the availability of data, we can see that the Black Sea Grain Initiative plays a significant role in allowing exports of wheat and maize from Ukraine to reach global markets. As mentioned before, this has improved global food availabilities and contributed to lower international prices. This also explains why we highlight the importance of extending the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and especially because it reduces uncertainty and allows predictability, and especially because the renewal is just at the beginning of the harvest, which is a big challenge. So we need to work hard in trying to do this. Now, if we look at the world fertilizer markets, and we basically look at urea and DAP, we have seen a significant decrease in the markets. And that's not magic, that's because there is more supplies. So fertilizers are moving and nitrogen is moving, which allows this to happen. So it's very important to understand that there is a flow of fertilizers in the world, which is happening enormously. Another challenge, especially of the second part of the agreement, was the mobility of gas and the ammonia gas. And what I show here in this graph is that the evolution of ammonia, especially in 2022, has started to be recovered. If you see at the level of exports, especially from Russian Federation, which is the light green, is the sixth in the bar, from top to bottom, you will see that there has been a significant shrink because of the close of the transfer through the duct of the gas pipeline. But clearly, there has been a supply response, and in the table, you will see which countries have been the one that has increased the level of exports to be able to compensate this decrease, especially around both countries which has substantially increased the level of exports that they are doing in gas, in ammonia. In this graph, we are showing the monthly imports of ammonia and the breakdown by exporting country. And you can see that since the war in Ukraine, there has been a reduction, but then this has started to stabilize over time, which means that today we have enough ammonia in the market, and that's why the prices are falling down. But what is important also to note is that this, of course, affects certain countries and was affecting certain countries. Especially, there were countries that were affected in northern part of Africa because of the production of fertilizers. But this has now stabilized, and there are other partners which have allowed these imports to flow, which has stabilized the price of ammonia, and therefore the production of fertilizers, and that's why we're observing better prices of fertilizers in the world today. So let me just conclude with very few remarks. First, Ukraine and Russian Federation are a main supplier of food and agricultural commodities in the global markets. The achievements from the Black Sea Grain Initiative improve food availability on the global markets, contributing to lower, less volatile international food import commodities. Market transparency and the provision of accurate and up-to-date data and information will be essential. To continue producing, Ukrainian farmers need markets to sell. So far, they have been bearing the brunt of transportation costs and low farm gate prices. If as a consequence of the lack of market access and other problems, such as the possible long-term impacts of the Kharkov Dam destruction on irrigation in the region, which will mainly affect internal food security, because these irrigated areas cover high-value commodities, which are internally consumed, and therefore will affect internal food security and also the neighborhood countries. Farmers retire from farming, the problem could be availability globally, and might be bigger, and markets will need time to adjust. Of course, there have been a supply response, and that's why we are observing lower prices also, but still, they play a significant role in the market, and that's why continuing the agreement of the Black Sea Grain Initiative for both countries is essential. The Black Sea Grain Initiative has had a positive impact on global food availability and market stabilization, and its continuation and well functioning will be essential for global food security in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you to the FAO Chief Economist. I now give the floor to the WFP Chief Economist and Director of Research, Assessment, and Monitoring, Ari Hussein.
Thank you, Rodney. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Really honored to be here, and I don't have a presentation. So let me just talk about a few things which we are seeing from what's happening in the countries, basically. As you well know, needs are high. Funding is getting cut. And this is the situation where literally every cent matters. Now, why is that important for the Black Sea Initiative? First and foremost, like Massimo said, brought international prices down. As of yesterday, 33 million tons were shipped out since the start of this initiative. 725,000 metric tons of those came to WFP. And they went to countries like Yemen, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, Somalia. But this is not the big story. The big story is that we all go to the international markets to buy a lot more than 725,000 metric tons. Last year we did 4.2 million metric tons. A lot of that was in kind, but also a lot of that was in commercial markets. Poor countries also go to the international markets to buy their food themselves. So it is not a question of where the Black Sea food actually goes. It is a question of it brings international prices down, so whether you're a rich country or a poor country, you can benefit from that. I think this is one point we must understand. It is not about here or there. It is about bringing prices down for everybody. The second thing is, the question is, okay, let's say for 1 second that Black Sea Initiative stops. What will happen then? Does that mean that we won't have food in the markets, in the international markets? No, we will have. Others will compensate. But it will be compensated at a cost. And that cost is both in time and in logistics. Meaning now instead of going to Ukraine or Black Sea, maybe you go to Canada, or you go to Australia, or you go to Argentina, which means you're going to pay more in terms of money, transport, but you're also going to pay more in terms of time. Now, at a time when our prices, as we sit right now, are 33% higher than pre-COVID, do we want to see this increase? At a time when food inflation is a concern for everybody around the world right now. When we look at, we follow about 170 countries. I can tell you that in 47 of those 170 countries, food inflation year on year more than 15%. 15 countries more than 50%. 4 countries more than 100%. The second thing, if you're importing food, Massimo mentioned that, the balance of payment issues. Prices are going up. Your ability to purchase on the international market has gone down, consequence of COVID and then war in Ukraine, and then interest rates are rising, and then there is high debt burden. So what happens? It all translates into balance of payment shortfalls. Meaning countries want to import food, but they just don't have enough money. So do we want to contribute more to that by stopping this so there is more volatility in the market? Let me just say something a little bit on the volatility. One thing is extension. One thing is piecemeal extension, 60 days. And if you want to really see how the markets are reacting to every 60 days, just look at how the futures move for these commodities, whether it's wheat, whether it's produce corn. Just look at the price of wheat on the 17th of May, because this last extension was on the 18th. There was a 10% hike. And then it came down. That type of volatility hurts poor people, poor countries who are already spending as much as they are spending. So bottom line, it's not whether 2.5% or 3% went to poor countries or went to Africa. The bottom line is prices came down for everybody. And that's what we should be asking for, that's what we should be pushing for, and that's what we are trying to do. So just to end, we feel that we need to minimize the volatility. We need to extend the Black Sea Initiative. We need to minimize the volatility, meaning extend it for a longer period till hopefully the end of this war, so that prices continue their downward trajectory and food starts to become affordable. And my very last thing is, prices are down, but please don't make the mistake of thinking that they are affordable. Because today, prices are at a level just before the war in Ukraine started, which for food was a 10-year high, and for fuel it was a 7-year high. So if there was no war in Ukraine, today we will be talking about high record level of prices, which have continued after the war. Thank you.
Thank you to the WFP Chief Economist, and I now give the floor to the IFAD Near East, North Africa, and Europe Regional Director, Dina Saleh.
Thank you, Rodney, and good morning, or good afternoon, actually, everyone. So to the representatives of Ukraine and the U.S. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today in this important event as we focus on the critical role of Ukraine in feeding the world. As we gather here, it's crucial to address the impact and significance of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, as has already been said by the previous speakers, for global food security. And today we have the opportunity to shed light on the positive contributions of this initiative, especially for the vulnerable populations, both in and out of Ukraine, and highlighting the potential of this initiative. I'll skew slightly the discussion from the initiative, a little bit more focusing on where IFAD really, puts a lot of its attention on, and that is on the smallholders and the rural communities. As a specialized UN agency and as an international financial institution, IFAD assumes a vital role in supporting resilience and capacity building, effectively mitigating the detrimental effects of shocks, while safeguarding the long-term achievements of development. We at IFAD serve as the primary proponents for smallholder farmers and rural communities within the United Nations, but also more broadly within the development community, as we look at diligently equipping these smallholders and rural communities with the necessary resources, knowledge, and opportunities to foster resilience, expand their enterprises, and empower them to prosper. By investing in agriculture, rural infrastructure, and sustainable farming practices, we empower rural people, enabling them to enhance their food security and to uplift the nutritional well-being of their families. We've all seen the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which inflicted a severe toll on the food systems, compounded by the enduring challenges of climate change and extreme weather events. We know that supply chains were disrupted then, and market access was also curtailed, and economic uncertainties also unfolded. These multifaceted trials have led to disruptions in the availability of food, but mainly cereals, and a precipitous surge in food prices, as you already heard. In 2021, the prices of wheat and other coarse grains have skyrocketed by approximately 30%, intensifying the plight of vulnerable populations already grappling with their own adversities. Moreover, all these shocks shed light on the risks associated with heavy reliance of mostly least developing countries, but also middle-income countries, on imported cereals, as disruptions in global supply chains and trade restrictions have impeded access to affordable and readily available imported cereals. So the focus here is on the dependence on imports, which affects significantly those smallholder farmers and rural communities. Furthermore, the supply chain disruptions and market closures, as we see, have rendered it arduous for them to sell their produce, resulting in diminished incomes and precarious financial stability. Smallholder farmers have faced additional challenges, including the significant price inflation of basic food items, as we heard. And this further exacerbates the difficulties faced by smallholder farmers and highlights the urgent need for support and interventions to ensure their resilience and foster their economic growth. So the war has further compounded these trials by smallholder farmers and disrupted further their access to food, their access to cereals, their access to markets, as well as their access to essential inputs such as fertilizer. And consequently, their livelihoods hang precariously in the balance, while the well-being of other impoverished rural and urban populations reliant on these farmers for sustenance remains under grave threat. The surge in basic food prices, particularly for cereals, adds an additional burden to smallholder farmers, who find themselves not only as producers, but also as consumers of food. Amidst these adversities, food insecurity levels vary across the rural-urban continuum. Initiatives like the Black Grain to Sea Grain Initiative emerge as beacons of hope. As we've heard, the initiative has facilitated over 33 million metric tons of foodstuffs to 45 countries worldwide. It's through these endeavors, like those developing nations, has received a significant share of food export, with wheat exports alone accounting for 65% of total wheat cargo, and benefiting nations in dire need. What I'd like to point out here is that countries that are in IFAD's portfolio, such as Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and Djibouti, have greatly benefited from increased grain exports. And consequently, as we've heard from Maximo and also heard from Ari, that the wheat price inflation is projected to be moderately moving from 14.2 in 2022 to about 8.6% in 2024. Yet, a substantial export gap of approximately 1,633,000 tons persists in these developing countries. The pressures faced by smallholder farmers compel them to prioritize short-term gains at the expense of the long-term health of their soil. So what we're witnessing as well is exacerbation in the detrimental cycle of land degradation. Heightened prices also spike disproportionately, impacting these poorer households as a greater portion of their budgets are allocated to food expenses. This reinforces the critical importance of initiatives like the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which work to minimize volatility, ensure affordability, and enable smallholders to continue their operations, fostering long-term stability and resilience. In the longer term, it is crucial to address the issue of food dependency in the context of the Food System Initiative. Many countries, including these smallholder farmers, heavily rely on imports. And to promote national food systems grounded in local production and reducing dependence on imports, concerted efforts will be necessary. This entails supporting those small-scale farmers and their communities, placing them at the heart of the food systems transformation, as emphasized in the UN Food Systems Summit. In response to the urgent needs caused by the war and the compounding crisis, IFAD has launched a new initiative called the Crisis Response Initiative, and this initiative is geared towards safeguarding livelihoods as well as building their resilience in rural communities, capitalizing on emerging market opportunities for small-scale producers. So I'd like to just end by saying, in conclusion, the challenges we face in global food systems, compounded by the conflict demands swift action and unwavering collaboration. What we see at IFAD is that there is an unwavering commitment to protect rural livelihoods, mitigating the worst impacts of the food crisis on vulnerable communities, to foster their long-term resilience. However, we cannot confront these challenges alone. Partnerships and synergy play a strong and vital role in achieving these goals. Collaboration amongst nations, organizations, stakeholders is essential to leverage collective expertise, resources, and innovation. And by working together, we can maximize the impact of initiatives like the Black Sea Grain Initiative, creating a comprehensive and sustainable approach to global food security. And it's no surprise that, as Mr. Gorbachev was saying, that Ukraine is looking for alternative routes, but these are still fall short of the supply capacity and demand for these critical commodities. So I'd like really to just end by saying, let's seize this opportunity to work together as an international community towards global food security and make a lasting difference in the lives of the most vulnerable populations.
Thank you, Dina. Nicola, Maximo, Arif, Dina, thank you all for these presentations. I think that, we've heard a lot of really good information here today. A few things stood out to me. First, the Black Sea Grain Initiative plays a critical role in providing food and stabilizing lowering global food prices. The current food crisis affects us all. The vulnerable populations are feeling it most acutely. Those are the nations that have more to lose if the initiative doesn't meet its full potential, or worse, if it ends. According to some of the UN data that we heard, 64% of wheat exported under the initiative goes to developing nations. And as was mentioned as well, according to the Joint Coordination Center, 57% of the exports under the BSGI are destined directly for developing countries. We're not all economists, unfortunately, for you all. I think sometimes this data, these numbers, they just all blur together for me. So I'd like to play a video quickly that puts a human face to these numbers, showing the effect of the BSGI grain in Kenya.
Nilipokea maharage, mafuta na ngano. Napikia mchele na ugali na ngano. Mimi nilipenda kumalizia shule na nisaidie familia yangu na nisaidie kila binadamu kuwa na shida.
I think it's important to remember that these are real people. These are real people that we're talking about. Their lives that we're saving by working together, as Dina said, to find solutions to these problems. So let's keep the beneficiaries of the Kukumba refugee camp in our mind as we hear from our fellow permanent representatives here about the importance and the impact of this critical initiative. So now I'd like to welcome to the podium the Ambassador of Turkey, Ömer Gürçük, to make a few short statements.
Distinguished Deputy Minister, distinguished delegates, since the start of the conflict, our approach towards the war has been clear and consistent. We stand with Ukraine in its efforts to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. We also support the efforts for finding a diplomatic end to the conflict. Our relations with our support for Ukraine are well known. In fact, both Kiev and Moscow view Turkey as a reliable interlocutor. Neither side questions our intentions to broker a diplomatic way out of the current gridlock. So, we can facilitate diplomacy when the conditions allow. We do this without turning a blind eye to what is happening on the ground. We do not compromise our principled positions. We have been denouncing the unjustified Russian aggression from the beginning. The Black Sea Initiative has been a leading case in point. Upon the request of the UN and Ukraine, Turkey played a key facilitating role in finalizing the UN plan for the safe export of Ukrainian grain through the Black Sea. Thanks to Turkey's efforts and its contacts with Ukraine and Russia, which included consultations at the highest level, a historic deal, namely the Black Sea Initiative, was signed in Istanbul on 22nd of July 22. A memorandum of understanding was also agreed to between the UN and Russia on the export of the Russian grain and fertilizer as a part of a package to relieve pressure on the world food markets. For the operations under the initiative, a joint coordination center was set up in Istanbul with the participation of the experts from Ukraine, Turkey, Russia, and the UN. Since it began last August, more than 32 million tons of grain and related foodstuff have been exported from 3 Ukrainian ports to 45 countries across the 3 continents. The initiative has also supplied World Food Programme's ongoing humanitarian operations in Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, and Yemen. It has brought stability to global food markets and lowered food prices for less developed countries. This is also shown in the relevant FAO reports. We ensured its extension twice through great efforts. Now we are at another critical juncture since the initiative will expire on the 17th of July. Russia announced that they expect to see progress regarding the export of their grain and fertilizer for the further continuation of the initiative. Unless their demands are met, they say they will terminate the initiative after July 17th. Russia also criticizes the destination of the export of grain. Actually, developing countries are the biggest buyer of the Ukrainian grain that has been shipped via the Black Sea Initiative. Despite its shortcomings, the initiative continues to deliver for all parties involved. We believe ending the initiative will harm everyone's interest. Therefore, we remain committed to the continuation of the initiative. This unique deal must be preserved. We also underline the importance of the seamless implementation of the UN-Russia MOU for food security and preventing a global fertilizer crunch. We welcome the UN's efforts in this regard and important steps taken by the leading Western countries. Both the Black Sea Initiative and the UN-Russia MOU remain a lifeline for global food security. Therefore, we must do our best to protect these agreements. Turkey will continue to play its part to this end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Küçük. And now I'd like to welcome the Netherlands Ambassador, Marcel Boekum, to the stage, or to the podium.
Thank you. Excellencies, Deputy Minister Dimitrijevic, allies, the government of the Netherlands and the people of the Netherlands are deeply moved by what is happening in Ukraine. Let me start by expressing our solidarity with Ukraine and underscore our commitment to do whatever we can to stop the war and rebuild the country. In this short intervention, I would like to make 3 quick points, examples of what we do to help Ukraine and that hopefully have a positive impact on global food security. Examples that could perhaps also inspire others to join. As a country that strongly believes in multilateral solutions to global problems, we invested in the UN Secretary General's Global Crisis Response Group, together with Spain and the EU, for investments in reconstruction of the severely damaged infrastructure and for emergency relief we work with multilateral institutions like WFP and IFAD, the World Bank, and with multilateral investment banks. And of course, the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine is established in The Hague, the International City of Peace and Justice. This international center will investigate the crime of aggression in Ukraine with the ultimate aim of prosecuting those responsible for the invasion. Second, in our report, we try to concentrate on those modalities and subjects we think have added value. It will not surprise you when I say the private sector is an important partner for us, especially in water and agriculture. In helping the reconstruction, extra subsidies and guarantees are lowering the risks to invest in Ukraine. In this effort, building back better is a guiding principle, also with a view to prepare Ukraine's economic integration in the European family. My third point is somewhat technical. As the war in Ukraine has severe negative consequences for global food security, we try to do as much as we can to end the war and get Ukraine back on its feet. This will benefit developing countries, amongst others by stabilizing global food prices. Several speakers refer to that. We sometimes hear the sentiment that all these investments in Ukraine divert funds that would otherwise be destined for developing countries. It is important to note that our whole support package of €2.5 billion is additional to our ODA. Chair, multilateral cooperation, public-private partnerships, and additionality are key building blocks of our support to Ukraine. The ultimate goal, of course, an end to the war and justice for all. You can count on us.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now I'd like to welcome to the podium Norway Ambassador Morten Asser.
Chair, Deputy Minister, Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to our Ukrainian colleagues, to Chief Economist Maximo Torero and his RBA colleagues Arif and Dina, to the US delegation and others that have suggested and organized this important side event. It is particularly good to see the three RBAs well represented on the podium. Your presence and your remarks confirms once again the extent to which Russia's war of aggression and the wholesale destruction of infrastructure and the agricultural sector of the country perpetrated by Russia has deep and dire consequences for global food security. And it also confirms that this war and its consequences directly affect the mandate and the tasks of the three UN Rome organizations. It is not politicization, as some have mentioned, but it goes at the heart and to the heart of the RBA's daily business. This indeed as reflected in decisions in 3 consecutive FAO Council meetings. I would also like, in starting, to express our strong solidarity and support to the government and the people of Ukraine. The consequences of Russia's war, including price hikes and market distortion, are felt, in addition to so much in Ukraine itself, as we have heard, in particular by populations and countries that are worse off in this world with regard to food security. The World Food Programme estimates that more than 345 million people worldwide now face high levels of food insecurity, twice the number roughly in 2020. I would like to make 2 points. Norway earlier this year enacted a 5-year support program for Ukraine, named after the humanitarian Fridtjof Nansen, the Nansen program, worth 7 billion euros. Nansen was the League of Nations' first High Commissioner for Refugees, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1922 for his efforts in mobilizing against hunger and famine after the First World War. Attached to the Nansen program is a supplemental for 2023 of 500 million euro for developing countries most affected by the consequences of the war, in particular in Africa. And a significant part of this funding is being dispersed to the 3 Rome organizations, with 1/2 targeted for acute humanitarian support and the other 50% for building resilience and food security. So we have provided rapid funding to the FAO SFERA Fund, to the IFAD Crisis Response Initiative, and to the WFP Immediate Response Account and other instruments. I say this, ladies and gentlemen, because all our states have committed to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. This illegal, senseless, and hugely destructive war is, in addition to so much else, a broadside leveled against the achievements of the SDGs. SDG 2, Zero Hunger, SDG 2, Zero Hunger in particular, and the world's poor. Secondly, we join our voice in urging that the Black Sea grain agreements be extended, and not only for 2 or 4 months at a time. We are very grateful for the efforts of Turkey, Ukraine, and the UN Secretary General and his team to extend this initiative to the benefit of global food security. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you all for your insights. These interventions, combined with the briefings today, make one thing very clear. The Black Sea Grain Initiative has been instrumental in ensuring food security, and its long-term extension is crucial for its continued success. Again, several people have said this, but let me just repeat it. This isn't about politics. It's about the food security of millions of people and the devastation caused by Russia's war against Ukraine. The U.S. position on food security remains consistent and it remains clear. We want to see Ukrainian and Russian grain and Russian fertilizer on the global markets. And we have been doing our utmost to facilitate exports from our side. Destroyed agricultural infrastructure and disrupted food systems and exports pose a grave threat to millions of people both within and beyond the borders of Ukraine. So again, thank you to Deputy Minister Dmytrasevich and Ukraine Grain Association President Gorbachev for the on-the-ground accounts of the effect of this war on one of the biggest bread baskets of the world. I also again extend my gratitude to Turkey Ambassador Küçük, whose nation continues to play an integral role in ensuring the health and life of this initiative. And thank you to FAO, to WFP, to IFAD, and to the other UN agencies and partners who are working tirelessly to support continued agricultural production and facilitate agricultural exports from Ukraine. Our partnership with and our commitment to the people of Ukraine is steadfast and enduring. We are with you today, we were with you yesterday, and we will be with you tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us today. Our hope is that you all leave this event knowing that by operating at its maximum potential, the Black Sea Grain Initiative can contribute significantly to global efforts to eradicate hunger and achieve sustainable development. So please join us for some snacks outside before many of us go to the final plenary meeting of this conference. Let's take the same spirit of cooperation and compromise with us this afternoon as those of us finish up this conference today. Thank you all so much.
Recording stopped.